Hi, all. Welcome to another episode of Saturday Architecture. In the series of selling to internal customers, one of the key challenges, let's assume we develop an application and it is done. The key question is why should the internal users actually use it? Only if that question is answered in their minds very clearly, they're going to use it. And that's what we are trying to address it, right? Understand for ourselves why should somebody use a feature or an application that we have developed. So, what is the starting point of making people use our application we built?
For me, the problem always starts with the context of the problem, always starts with knowing the problem that you're trying to solve. And I think let me go with an example of personally myself, right? A lot of times I have it explain the problem to people. That's where for me the problem starts. And for me to explain the problem, I have to be in the right context of explaining the problem that they see as a problem. That is where I see it all starts with the context. Are you in the right context of understanding the problem? Okay, understand the problem well, and you are in the context of it, then it's easy for you to go and sell it. That's where it starts.
So the things which I've seen work is if you are able to connect to the scenario of the end user, the context which Varda just mentioned, right? How do you really get into it? And we a little bit earlier we discussed about how we can use one of the lean concept which is called walking the Gemba, which is you are in the situation with that user and experiencing what they are actually experiencing in the day to day and the problem which you're trying to solve, which Vada said, right? If you are able to connect with that experience of what they are and you are able to understand that scenario and contribute to the solution of that scenario, only then the solution would make sense to them. If the application development team hasn't gone through that exercise, it is very likely that you will end up producing something which is probably not as relevant as you thought it was in your mind, because you haven't really seen and experienced what the end user is actually experiencing. So that is, if they have done that, then it becomes much easier to get adoption of that specific scenario and that specific use case. One of the examples which we have seen is trying to get users to use a specific feature in your application, right? And you expect them to, let's say, click here, click there, enter this data, and finally do this thing. And earlier we also talked about data quality, trying to get people to improve on data quality, which will originate from the right entry of data, right? Now, for a right data to be entered, it has to be easy for that person to be able to do it, right? And the way you would experience is when you stand with that person, see how much effort it takes to enter that data, right? And how complicated it might be for that person to spend that much time away from actually the work they are doing and standing in front of the terminal or using the phone or whatever other device you are using to enter that data, right? So that first-hand experience is very much required for you to actually experience the use case, right? The use case has to be experienced firsthand in that case. Right?
So just extending the conversation from, so how to be contextual from Varda's point of view, how to build the systems which feel by the end user. So the best option is to co-create. So co-create with the end users as we go on. There are a lot of techniques around it. One is could be the jobs to be done as one of the methods, or value stream mapping is another method where you sit and co-create along with the end user on the overall process, how is the specific information or how the specific system is going to add value to it, and what is in it for them. That's the first order for them. So the first order is what is in it for the user that they're trying to provide, and trying to co-create with them with the various techniques that is available right now. The second part of it is the second order, if I put it across, is connecting the analytics around it. In the information world right now, we could get a lot of analytics in terms of whether the statement that is provided or co-created by the end users are valid. So you create a lot of analytical statements around it, statistics around it, in terms of whether it is really usable by the wider mass. I get those statistics around it. That's the second order for me. The third order of abstraction, while solutioning it, trying to abstract it, try to create the patterns around it, try to create the architectural abstractions for it, so that it will become a vision or a blueprint for anybody to add any features for that user going forward. That kind of abstractions as part of the solutioning phase. So that's the three layer of the execution that I can put it across to make sure the feature is usable.
Another interesting facet I saw in Wall Street Journal, an article recently shared by another good leader called Nagarajan Srivatsa. He quoted that article, but the article was with respect to retail industry. He talked about it from a healthcare perspective also. And this was with respect to adoption of AI. And I'll give one example. It was telling like how giving real-time feedback on performance, right? How many units of items is finished, or how good the quality of data is going to be increased by 95% accuracy. So it's like telling use this application, use this feature, it will give 95 accuracy of the quality of data produced. Now there is somebody sitting in a remote town, right, and entering some data, which is a part of a large application. To that person entering data there, 95% accuracy or 85% accuracy is not really relevant to them. And the business scenario is so high, like this is going to be a FDA trial happening somewhere in US, right? For somebody sitting in a very small town in India, FDA doesn't exist, field trials doesn't exist, nothing. So even though that is a real context and it is the actual scenario, it becomes very hard to give a scenario what matters to them, why accuracy is important. So there, what was actually suggested is you need to connect that to something which is the identity of that person. Now every individual wants to be a better version of themselves. So this person sitting as a data entry person, it's a you can be a much kinder, nice, caring person by making sure that you enter the data correctly. Because if you enter the data wrong, somebody's health is going to get affected. So you are a protector of somebody's health. Now to protect that person, this feature will help you. And the context is about the person. It becomes interesting. Who is that as a person? And then zoom in from there. One is the business context. Yes, important. But the other context which Varda was talking about sometimes, culture. So the moment you talk about culture, it is the employees, it is the users, it is the associate. Who are they? What matters to them becomes the context. Then I think we would get an alignment between both of them. I think it's a great discussion. Thanks all for joining. I hope others would get some ways and